It's a network TV show. What were you expecting this to be? I mean, yeah, this isn't a movie. It's a TV show, and it's not even like the movie pilot for a TV show either. It's just the first 2 episodes that happen to be someone's idea of enough of a status quo establisher to be a good place to stop for now. It has no real business being in movie theaters, to say nothing of IMAX movie theaters, other than Marvel Studios apparently wants to test the whole Marvel Studios is incapable of failing at things hypothesis for themselves. So, as a theatrical release, it's pretty skippable. The big screen doesn't add anything to it, and it's going to be on TV at the end of the month anyway, and you can just watch it then. But as just that, as a TV show, it's fine. It's just fine. I'll DVR it. It's got a great big dog. That's something. I mean, it's not that I don't get the pile-on, folks. Everyone has been waiting for Marvel to actually fail at something, and since Iron Man 2 and Thor 2 being not good didn't manage to really damage the movies at all, Iron Fist sucking and Defenders having that big Iron Fist-shaped weight around its neck doesn't seem to have hurt the Netflix endeavors overall. Even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. rebounded after a crappy season 3, so now all eyes are on INHUMANS as maybe the next big Marvel question mark, since it doesn't have any other tendrils holding it up apart from technically being a S.H.I.E.L.D. spin-off and thus officially part of the cinematic universe through that. And while it's not an Iron Fist level garbage fire, but then what the fuck is? Yeah, it's about as shaky as any Marvel thing has been since the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that at least had an established popular character in Phil Coulson to carry things, so maybe this will be where Marvel turns out to be vulnerable after all, but it's not really bad, it's just a mixed bag. Anyway, the Inhumans are this weird set of characters that originated back in the old Fantastic Four books that were kind of a dry run for various ideas that Stan Lee and or Jack Kirby would later expand on in stuff like X-Men and especially Kirby's Fourth World stuff later on. Their mythos is very, very convoluted. They've never been very popular overall, but supposedly the reclusive weirdo billionaire who's still technically in charge of Marvel thought they were mutantish enough to be an X-Men replacement, so they were gonna get a movie for a while. But then the guy in charge of the MCU, Kevin Feige, successfully got Disney to make him the final word on the movie side of things, period, so now Inhumans is a TV show instead. Landing on ABC after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. spent much of its last 3 seasons setting up that aforementioned convoluted mythology. So for those of you who don't watch S.H.I.E.L.D. or follow the comics, the basic idea is that Inhumans are the modern descendant of prehistoric Earth humans who were experimented on way back in the day by the Kree. They'd be the blue aliens, Ronan's guys, basically. While they originally appear like normal humans, exposure to an element called Terrigen causes them to evolve and reveal superhuman powers, monster-like physical transformations, and sometimes both. Or sometimes also neither. It's very confusing. But while S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Inhuman storyline has concerned itself with an outbreak of people on Earth discovering previously unknown inhumanness after the world's water supply was contaminated with Terrigen, Inhumans the series reveals that a whole civilization of these guys have been living in secret on the moon in an invisible city called Attilan for centuries, currently presided over by a royal family comprised of the main characters from the comics: King Blackbolt, Queen Medusa, Princess Crystal, Future Seer Karnak, Warriors Gorgon and Triton, and Lockjaw, a giant friendly bulldog who can teleport them places. And, you know, when you say it out loud, it's still pretty incredible that we're at a point where this goofy bullshit can even be a TV show. But anyway, our hook for the series is that it turns out Black Bolt, etc. are aware of the sudden mass appearance of Inhumans on Earth because of all the stuff happening on S.H.I.E.L.D. and have been trying to help some of them escape to the moon, which sounds nice and altruistic, but ends up pissing off the King's scheming younger brother Maximus, because of course there's a scheming younger brother to the King. See, as it happens, Attilan has kind of a problematic caste system thing going on. Inhumans who go through the Terrigen ritual but don't end up manifesting powers, or maybe they only get crappy powers, again, it's kind of unclear, wind up stuck in a permanent underclass that does all of the grunt work. Maximus happens to be one of these unlucky no-power guys, except for also being royal, and rather than bring even more Inhumans to the moon, he thinks they should be getting ready to invade Earth. To force the issue, he stages a military coup, but in the midst of it all, the main royals, except for Crystal and Lockjaw, all escape to Earth and wind up scattered across Hawaii, some of them with their powers neutered or impacted. Which apparently is our core scenario for the series. The royal family having to find their way to each other, regroup, outwit the assassins Maximus will send down to kill them, and find a way to get back home. And at least judging from these first 2 episodes, the whole enterprise is incredibly fucking silly. Like, it turns out I seriously jumped the gun in declaring Defenders the cheesiest thing Marvel has ever done. When you combine the inherent absurdity of the premise and the characters with the way outside their budget and scope character concepts, what you end up with is effectively a late 90s Nickelodeon genre show, but with middle-aged adults instead of teenagers. At least some of that is owed to the chintzy minimalist production design, which honestly would probably look pretty cool if they bothered to photograph it with any kind of flair beyond basic network point-and-shoot drama setups. I'm sure they spent what is for ABC a lot of money on this, but they really could have stood to spend some more of it. On the other hand, maybe super cheesy might have been the only place you can go when your main character's primary mode of travel is giant teleporting dog and whose leader never speaks because his superpower is a voice so loud that even a whisper can be a sonic boom going off. And I think they probably made the correct decision by having all of the characters be super matter-of-fact serious about how ridiculous this all is, which only heightens the already heavy schlocky B-movie vibe that permeates the whole proceedings. Now, it's probably a foregone conclusion that Lockjaw will end up being the big thing that everyone likes because dog, but honestly, so far the standout as far as I'm concerned actually seems to be Anson Mount as Black Bolt. Mount has this really rough, hard-edged, tough guy look happening, so it's kind of a riot to see him playing a guy who's alternately arrogant and kingly, but also wounded and self-conscious and can only communicate through sign language, gestures, and facial expressions. This has to be a weird role to figure out, and he's doing something really interesting with it. Also, his relationship with Serinda Swan as Medusa feels pretty genuine and worth investing in. They've got good chemistry, and she holds her own despite having what has to be by default the silliest looking superpower in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. The other characters mostly seem to be holding up invisible, I'll be interesting later in the season signs, but thus far no one is really bad. Maximus especially seems to be waiting on a dozen different shoes to drop to make him something other than an unambiguously villainous, but then again, it's not his fault that the show spoils what should have been his big "oh you bastard" bad guy moment by making him commit the big transgression using the silliest possible prop they could have given him for that situation. More problematically, it feels like a bad sign that after 2 episodes, there doesn't seem to be a coherent theme at work within the series. It's interesting that they seem to have made the quasi-eugenicist undercurrent of the mythos that's always been the super creepy element of the comics something like the focus of the main conflict, but the actual view of it seems muddy and confused so far. If INHUMANS is not going to get by on its looks, and it's not, it needs to be thematically strong and character-driven, and thus far, it's not really doing that either. But there's definitely potential here to an extent, especially if it eventually syncs back up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it feels like the personalities might go well together. Maybe. It could also just turn all the way bad. For now, 2.5 stars, at least we're not still putting up with Danny Rand.